Welcome back. Today I'm going to share how to make this triple chocolate wrap cake. This cake is made with my favorite chocolate cake layer recipe, which right now is my go-to, and it's frosted with my classic American buttercream. So I added a very thick layer of frosting between each of these cake layers just because, of course, I really love frosting, as you guys know. So once I had added the frosting onto the layers using a piping bag, I smoothed using a large offset spatula. So I repeated this process with my layers, building upwards, and I'm using 7-inch cake layers here. So one batch of my chocolate cake batter makes about 4 7-inch cake layers, or if you want your cake to be a little bit shorter and not quite as tall, you could also make 8-inch cake layers. So both these recipes are up on Chelsweets.com, and I'll include the link in the description box below. So once all my layers were stacked, I added on some frosting around the sides of the cake and a little bit on the top to help create my crumb coat. So I worked this frosting all the way around and used a bench scraper to get it really nice and smooth, because the smoother your crumb coat is, the easier time you'll have getting smooth sides on your finished cake. So I chilled the cake, and once the crumb coat was firm to the touch, I added on a second, thicker layer of the same buttercream. So I smoothed this using my offset spatula first and then my bench scraper. If you guys want to see a more in-depth tutorial on how I get my cake so smooth, you can click the link in the upper right corner. So next comes the hard part, which is making the wrap to go around the cake. And I shouldn't say hard, it's a little bit challenging, but totally doable. I took a piece of parchment paper and I made it the length of my cake pan. And that's going to help you have it be roughly the size of the perimeter of your cake. Next, I took 3 different types of chocolate, placed them into piping bags, and heated them in the microwave until they were similar consistencies. So you're going to want to heat your white chocolate less than your dark chocolate, just based on the amount of fat that they have in them. I then drizzled my chocolate onto my parchment paper, which I also trimmed to be just a little bit taller than the height of my cake. So I started with my dark chocolate and just made some big swirls around my parchment paper. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can just have fun, let it free flow. I tried to make pretty big circles, and I wanted to do the dark chocolate first because I wanted it to be the most visible on our white buttercream. So once I had added all 3 different types of chocolate, I let this dry on my counter for about a half hour. And other people in tutorials have said this happens in like 2 minutes or much faster. But it's really just important that you're aware of the consistency of the chocolate and that it's still slightly flexible, but strong enough and firm enough to hold its shape. So when it gets to that point, you can pick it up and carefully place it around your cake. If little bits fall off like mine did here, don't worry about it. It's still going to look great. Just carefully press it into the buttercream. So just gently work your way around, making sure that it's in place, and then pop this into the fridge for at least 10 to 15 minutes to allow the chocolate to finish setting. And then very carefully pull the parchment paper around the cake to reveal your beautiful chocolate wrap. Fun fact, I actually tried to pull my cake out after 10 minutes and the chocolate wasn't quite set. So as I was starting to pull away the parchment paper, it wasn't really sticking in place like I wanted it to. So just really be aware of where your chocolate is at in the cooling process, because it can vary based on how warm you heated it initially, how long you let it sit, and even the type of chocolate that you're using. So just be very aware of that as you're doing this. I used my leftover chocolate to drizzle over some strawberries to decorate the top of the cake with. So I just went kind of wild and tried to cover them with all 3 types of chocolate. I let these chill in the fridge for about 10 minutes until that chocolate was nice and firm, and then I piled these nice and high on top of my cake. And that's it. Our chocolate wrap cake is complete. So to cut into this, I obviously had to kind of disassemble my pyramid of strawberries, which is totally fine. I wanted to still keep some on my slice, but that way they don't collapse and fall everywhere once you remove it. So that's it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, be sure to click that like button. And also, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section.